black candidate to make a bid for the bank's presidency.
So we're pleased to have Dr. Ngozi here with us on Facebook Live, and joining us are three women making a difference in their communities around the world. So they're going to be talking to Dr. Ngozi as well as you on Facebook Live. In Dubai, Ola Orokunrin. She is a physician and founder of the Flying Doctors. That's an air ambulance service based in Lagos, Nigeria.
And in Johannesburg, South Africa, Busi Mukumbuzi. She's a student and an entrepreneur. And in Malaysia, Nurul Azza Anwar. She's the vice president of the People's Justice Party and a member of parliament.
So, Dr. Ngozi, what did Garvey say to you to make you take the job? What did they say and you were like, yes, I have to do that job?
Well, Garvey said to me that they are looking for someone with the kinds of skills I have who can help them talk to finance ministers, who can speak that language, who can make the bridge between health and finance. And they also said that they wanted it because they were actually doing something, which I think is fantastic, which is trying to work to a situation where they work themselves out of a job, where a country takes over its program, its financing, its running, everything. And you know this is the dream of development institutions, to work yourself out of a job, but it actually never happens.
Actually, do you know what? I never believed that. And I like the fact that there's an agency that says that. I feel like that their job is to keep themselves in a job, and it worries me about
You're talking like my husband.
being honest now on Facebook here. It's like, why would they do themselves out of a job? Why wouldn't they want to continue to have that job forever and ever and ever? Which is why I have problems
well,
with
Femi, you know, my husband says that all the time, but let me tell you why. These institutions are full of people who are really there. They're idealistic. They want to help. They are not there because they want to make, I'm not saying it's everybody, I'm saying the majority of people I encountered in my development career are very sincere. They want to help others. And this is one way out. And they recognize that one way of helping is empowering the people to take care of themselves. It's just that it takes so long. Again, I'm not saying it's every single person, but a good number of them. So Angavi is an organization that says, we want to work ourselves out of a job. We actually have a list of about 20 countries where we are trying to phase out in a very good way so that countries can take over their vaccination and immunization programs. And you know, Gavi has immunized over 580 million children in over 73 countries and saved 8 million lives. And so, you know, the idea that they would empower countries to be able to continue doing that for themselves is great.
And for anybody who is not familiar with Garvey's work, it's Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. Omar.
So we're getting a quite wide variety of questions. So I'll be throwing some things at you here. So we have Neslihan, who tweeted in, asking about corruption. In an ideal world, you can do away with corruption entirely, but we don't live in an ideal world. And there's a question of whether you just want to bring it down to a manageable level. So Neslihan over here asks, is it possible to achieve things like government transparency as well as ending corruption for Nigeria? And if not, why not? What would you say to Neslihan?
Well, you know, let me start by saying that no level of corruption is really acceptable. So we shouldn't persuade ourselves that there's some acceptable level. I know somebody asked me that, you know, were you working for an acceptable level of corruption? And I said, I don't know what that means. You know, but we do accept we live in the real world. And whether it's a developed country or developing, it's there. So the issue is, how do you bring more transparency and good governance so that people can have information? Because I think the more information citizens have, the more they're able to question what is being done by their policymakers. And that tends to have, I'm not saying it stops corruption, but it makes it harder. You also need...
Dr. Ngozi?
Yes.
Sorry, because I was so excited by that perfect answer. I think sometimes when you take a particular position and so it's very clear, it's going to give and make society, an impact, and give an impact to society. So my question is more, you know, you're not going to join the cabinet anytime soon. I think you made that clear. But how do you ensure that you leave a strong legacy for other younger women to be part of politics? Nigeria has a strong percentage at 24%, as you mentioned earlier, but worldwide, we're only looking at less than 23% from the upper and lower houses of parliament. So my question to you is, how pivotal is training for younger women, for other women, and inculcated with the values, anti-corruption values which you mentioned earlier? How important is that?
I think it's very important. By the way, the 24% was for Africa on average. I think Nigeria's numbers are much less. Training is very important. Encouragement, incentivizing the women. It's not easy. I mean, when you get up to, as a young female, and you want to be a politician or an entrepreneur, there are not too many examples of women succeeding in it. And I'm not just talking about Africa. All over the world, you see women taking a beating in one form or the other when they enter politics. And you have to ask yourself, many of them...
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, whether you are...
That's a painful voice of experience there.
I know you've taken...
Another painful voice of experience.
You've taken a beating. I've taken a beating. There are many women, taking beatings, even in the U.S., the candidate. It's not easy being a woman in politics. But you've got to be driven. First of all, you need to ask yourself, why are you in it? Then second, you need to, I think training is very important. Just going in without realizing how difficult it's going to be.
Who trained you then, Dr. Ngozi?
I wasn't trained. Like, I didn't even go in as a politician. I don't even think of myself as a politician.
Did you have any idea what you were doing?
I had an idea what I was doing with my job, which is why we were able to successfully turn the Nigerian economy around during the time I was there and experience 6% on average growth. But in terms of politics, I think that I was too straightforward. I don't think the politicians like me.
What do you mean?
They don't like me at all.
Let's unpack too straightforward. Unpack that for us. What exactly does that mean in the context of your experience?
Well, I think I think, from what I see of politics and politicians all over, and other women also tell me, you have to be so willing to compromise so many things to fit in.
Principles?
If you have, I went in there knowing I was going into a difficult job. Nobody trained me, but I had certain principles. And I even sat down and discussed those principles with my father, who, thank God, is still alive and still very cogent and gives strong advice. And we discussed it, even within my family. How are you going to behave? It's not when she's in this job, you suddenly start asking her to do this and do that. So I had principles going in, and when you're asked to compromise those principles, it becomes very difficult. But let me tell you, it's also very dangerous. And that's one thing I want to say to you, is that it's dangerous. Because you don't fit in. You stick out like a sore thumb. So everybody then has a pot shot at you. And if I still believe that in fighting corruption, the most important thing you have to do is go beyond just the individuals to institutions. And that dawned on me during my first stint as finance minister. I noticed that, look, we don't even have the financial systems in place to stop people from taking money. We were dealing in cash. We were moving cash around.
So the finance ministry in Nigeria was dealing in cash?
No, meaning that we were transferring money to agencies. Instead, we had no electronic platforms. So when I saw that, the first thing in 2005 was to say to the president, then at that time was President Obasanjo, look, and get his support so that we could ask the World Bank to come and help us. DFID, the USAID, all of them pitched in for us to develop electronic platforms, and they take time. So we started in 2005. It sort of stopped when I left. I came back, I found one of the reasons I went back was I realized that these things might never get to a point of no return. So I went back and we set up, I just want to tell you, we set up an integrated personnel management system, IPIS, to enroll civil servants with biometrics so that people couldn't smuggle in fake civil servants. It still was not 100% complete but we got to a point of no return. Believe me, we found over 60-something thousand fake civil servants, saving the country about $1.1 billion in the process. We put together a financial management platform so that electronically, Treasury and the Budget Office could transfer money and the departments and agencies between each other instead of sending cash to agencies who would now use it to do their thing. We put into place a treasury single account so the finance minister could have an overview. We were in the process. We implemented up to 75% of these things. And I'm very proud that today the present government is building on those systems.
Dr. Ngozi, does anyone ever interrupt you?
Not when I get going.
No, actually, we're getting commentary specifically when we were talking about. You went back because things were not self-sustaining. You mentioned the economy did so well when you were there, and we've got a lot of tweets from people who are saying things got worse after you left, which raises this question that just came right now live on Facebook Live from Mac, who says, how can we ensure continuity in government programs and projects in the African continent? How do you get it to the point to where what the progress you make is self-sustaining and doesn't just wither away when the people who implemented it go away?
Two things. Well, I believe in systems, and that's why I was not letting you cut me off, because building these systems, they're there now, and the present government is using them. I'm really proud of that. I'm very happy. However, I'll tell you one thing that is very difficult on the continent, and I think I mention it now and again. We don't, in many countries, have a social compact. A social compact is when in a country, everybody agrees that no matter who comes to power, certain things must continue to be done to put that country forward. Everybody agrees on it, no matter whether it's left, right, or center in terms of the political configuration. Everybody agrees that, say, diversification must continue, and you must take off from where the last government left off and continue it. When you have a social compact, it becomes easier. So you may...
How do you get to that point?
It needs a conversation in the country. It needs dialogue. It needs discourse. I'm sorry, there's no easy way. I don't even have the answer. I'm just telling you what I noticed, that countries where people agree that certain basic things have to be done in certain ways, no matter what, then whoever comes to power, you know, those things just continue in another guise. Even in the UK, you know, whether it's left or right or center, there are certain things that you just know. Everybody there agrees they must have a national health service, right? Right?
Well,
so no matter
more or less.
or most, let's say most people, no government, whether conservative or Labour, whether the Conservatives has been able to do it because there's a social compact that this works. So you can tweak it this way, you can cut the cost that way, you can change it, but they've kept it. That's one area where all citizens seem to agree. So that we need...
Dr. Ngozi, on the subject of healthcare, do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Related to your work with Gavi.
Yeah.
You were talking about basic things, and I think healthcare is one of those basic things that you're talking about that is important. And I just wanted to ask, you mentioned about your work with Gavi and the relationship between the provision of healthcare and economic benefits. When you're going to speak to people, what is the argument you make to try and persuade ministers of finance across the continent about the relationship between investment in healthcare and, investment in healthcare being a good economic decision?
I think that's such a wonderful question, because even as Minister of Finances, I came to realize that as I was doing my job. And here, let me just give you one piece of information. Take vaccines. You know, finance ministers would like to, and economists would like to hear hard arguments, cost-benefit. A Johns Hopkins University study just shows that investing $1 in vaccines returns $18 in avoided healthcare costs and benefits. That's the kind of number I put in front of a finance minister and say, look, you should invest in this because the returns are so high. The second example is pointing to what can happen if you don't take healthcare seriously. Let's take Ebola. And what happened? Let's say if you talk to the former finance minister of Guinea or Liberia or Sierra Leone, they'll tell you that that disease and the impact on employment, on people, wiped out percentage points of growth of their GDP. People couldn't work. People were dying. Do you understand? So it is vital and central. And we know that pandemics, if we don't prepare for pandemics, it's going to have a very serious impact on economic growth going forward.
So Dr. Ngozi and ladies, we're right at the end of our chat. Hasn't time gone really fast? We have probably been talking to Dr. Ngozi for a little bit under an hour when we add up all of our pre-show and our main show and our Facebook Live show. The time has gone so quickly. Omar, I'll give you the last word.
I will give you a last word
the
here.
Penultimate word.
Yep.
The last word comes from Dr. Ngozi.
That's right. From our online community here, from a fan of yours, Ike, who says Dr. Ngozi was one of the most dynamic, dynamic finance minister. She exudes confidence and intelligence in and out of the office, and we are so proud of her.
Oh, I do have one last question.
Thank you.
When was the last time you raised your voice?
To who?
Doesn't matter.
I don't know. Maybe this morning to my husband.
Oh! Okay. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-iweala, it's been a pleasure having you on this Facebook Live session. It's been a pleasure having you on the stream. Ladies, thank you very much for being part of this special edition of the stream. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.